Senator Back.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. Well, it's disappointing for me to hear in this place from the leader of a party which is part of government a disappointing, insulting and dismissive presentation from that of Senator Milne. I'm deeply disappointed by it, or at least I have learnt now just in the last few seconds what astroturfing is all about, Deputy President, because I had absolutely no idea, and I'm sure in his contribution Senator McDonald is going to tell us more about it. I do congratulate Senators Madigan and Xenophon for the work that they are doing. I can't understand why Senator Milne would be attacking particularly Senator Xenophon, who seems to support her in so many areas, but I'm sure he will speak to that. And of course I want to recognise the late Senator Judith Adams, who was very, very passionate in this area, the now past Senator Steve Fielding, who were participants in the Senate Community Affairs References Committee's inquiry, chaired of course competently by Senator Siewert from the Greens. But it is so disappointing for somebody who, in Senator Milne's case, who speaks of the fact that she has such an interest in rural Australia, that she would be so derisive and so dismissive of people in rural Australia who themselves believe there are health effects. And what's equally disappointing, the collegiality of this Senate, Deputy President, is the fact that we participate in Senate hearings, we listen and learn and ask and form views. Now, in the hearing that was held only last Wednesday week, Senator Milne herself was not a participant in that particular hearing, and much of the nonsense that we just heard from her would in fact have been answered had she been a participant. Comments like those who earn an income from wind farms don't get sick, whereas those who don't earn one do. Well, I just point Senator Milne to the evidence of a Mr David Mortimer, himself a retired naval engineer whose area of specialty, strangely enough, was movement of sound and electromagnetic waves through different media, including air, ground and water. He himself and his family are recipients, they are hosts, they do earn an income, and he, for one, has come out and said recently, yes, we are suffering ill effects. That's the disappointment of Senator Milne, because she is an intelligent person. And why she would expose herself to ridicule with a statement like that is beyond me. And I'm very pleased that she didn't link me to any of these AstroTurf and other organisations, because I have no links to any of them. What I can say to you, Deputy President, that in my time as Chief Executive of the Rottnest Island Authority off the coast from Fremantle, we were the hosts of the first wind turbines in Western Australia, and it was from that work that the Albany and the Esperance wind farms were developed. And when it comes to solar energy, Senator Milne, in case you're listening, I'm proud to say that my organisation, in fact, was the developer of no less than 6 applications of solar energy, including, of course, solar hot water systems, solar-based remote lighting, solar-based navigation markers, but interestingly, solar electric fencing for the small marsupials, the quokka, from which the island derives its name, and the world's first, I believe, ever solar-powered remote composting toilet. So I won't stand here in this place and listen to ridicule from Senator Milne or anybody else about my interest in renewables. We all know in Western Australia, in Cockburn Sound, there's some tremendous work going on with the use of wave energy for generating power, and I, for one, am very interested in it. Our previous colleague from the other place, Wilson Tuckey, always a great advocate for the value of tidal power from the north of our state, where we have 10-metre tides twice daily. So don't come in here through you, Deputy President, Senator Milne, and start criticising me for the concern I have. Deputy President, there are 2 elements that are of concern to me in this issue. First of all, I want to be satisfied that there are no adverse health impacts of any technology that's introduced into this country. And secondly, I want to see technology that is commercially viable, realistic, or has the capacity to be. And I make the point as an arch-federalist, and of course a Western Australian, that I have no interest at all in the federal government removing from the states and territories their inherent constitutional right to govern whatever it is they do under the Constitution. But equally, I say to you, as a senator of this Australian Parliament, I do have an obligation to ensure that there are not adverse health effects over which we can have some control. And secondly, I do not want to see the expenditure of vast sums of taxpayers' money on developments of any sort, including wind turbines or wind farms, if indeed they are not shown to be commercially viable. That has been the motive. That has been the motive that has caused me to pick up the work of the late Senator Adams and, in fact, to participate with Senators Xenophon and Madigan, by telephone Senator Birmingham and the Chairman Senator Cameron in the hearings recently. I ask, Deputy President, if there are such concerns from the wind farm developers about noise, why do they not do two things? Why do they not make publicly available the information that they receive on audible noise? And secondly, why do they continually refuse to evaluate low-frequency, infrasound and other effects that may be having an adverse health effect? As we know, and as I brought out recently in the hearing in Canberra, we have over all of the major airports in Australia in real time going on to a website called WebTrack. And anybody listening, anybody in this chamber can do it now, as indeed the Chairman, Senator Cameron, did whilst I was asking my questions the other day. He and the Secretary went on to the WebTrack for Sydney Airport. He interrupted me to say, yes, what he says is right. I am watching in real time noise over Sydney Airport. And I say, if we can do that for every airport in Australia, why can we not do it for the wind farms or those in the vicinity of them? I also ask the question, and my answers, I have not yet had adequate answers. Why is it that the contracts that the wind farm developers demand of the hosts have these particular clauses? One of them, the operator will generate sound pressure levels of a maximum of 50 decibels auditory, and the operator consents to the proposed operation of a wind farm, listen to this, Deputy President, despite its non-compliance with noise guidelines, sound pressure levels set out in a clause of the deed. I am reading from a contract that wind farm developers require landowners to sign. And furthermore, the organisation uses a contract to include a clause that shifts liability for health effects due to noise from the developer to the landholder. And I quote, "The landholder releases the developer from any liability for loss, damage or injury occurring in the premises or on the land arising from the tenant's breach of the Environmental Protection Act 1970 due to noise emitted from wind turbine generators." Well, if Senator Milne doesn't have any concern about those clauses in those contracts, I certainly do, Deputy President. And remember, these contracts tie people up for 50 years. Neighbours are being asked to sign for the fact that for a 50-year or even more period, they themselves will not complain. I ask the question, and I've asked it of the developers themselves, what are you trying to hide? We had evidence the other day, and it's a shame Senator Milne wasn't there, because she would have heard it. We had evidence the other day from a Professor Hanson, who has received Australian Research Council funding into having a look at some of these aspects of ill health. The wind farm developers will not release their data to him to undertake independent research. I ask, why not? Simply because if I had confidence in my technology, first of all, I would be out there very proudly saying it. Secondly, I would not be tying people up to confidentiality agreements that prevent them from actually stating if they do believe they've got adverse health effects. And thirdly, I certainly would not be denying scientists access to actually review these circumstances. And it is this, Deputy President, that brings me to the conclusion that for the first time ever, and whether it's in English or Dutch or Danish or Norwegian or Swahili, I don't care. I want to see independent research undertaken into issues associated with the question of adverse health effects on people affected by wind turbines. And Senator Milne, I am not paid by anybody, I am not in anybody's pocket, and I don't know what or who AstroTurf organisations are. What I want to see, Deputy President, is a proper literature review, and I have questions and concerns. I have questions and concerns over the independence of those who undertook the so-called rapid review by NHMRC, and I asked questions recently in the hearing about that. The very term rapid review of itself, I think, was a most unfortunate term, and I urge yet again NHMRC to remove from their website the outcome of that rapid review, because simply there is a question as to its adequacy and its validity. Deputy President, what the Coalition wants to see, as I heard my colleague Senator Birmingham spell out, we want to see independent undertaking by credible scientists who can have full access to all noise data, who can undertake epidemiological studies, undertake adequate funding to do the research and laboratory studies, who can actually go to industry and go to the communities, totally independent of bias, be it my side, be it Senator Xenophon and Madigan, or indeed Senator Milne's side, and undertake this work. I want to see studies undertaken of audible noise, low-frequency noise, infrasound, electromagnetic radiation and vibrations associated with all aspects of the technology. This is the effect that's happening in rural communities around Australia and Western Australia at the moment, Deputy President. And this is what amazes me. Perhaps Senator Milne doesn't get out into rural Australia. I know Senator Siewert does. But we have communities in Western Australia, and the absolute cornerstones of communities in Western Australia and around rural Australia are the Country Women's Association and bushfire brigades. Those two are the absolute foundations. We have circumstances in our rural communities now, I'm sorry I'm keeping Senator Collins awake, where there are people who are not attending CWA meetings because of anger and discord. There are people who are not turning out at rural fires because of their concerns and because of the community discord. Mr. President, I certainly am interested in the legislation that has come forward. At this stage there are deficiencies in it, but I am very, very hopeful that the Coalition may in fact be able to contribute actively and sensibly to resolving this question.